First, I'm interested to get your reaction to the resignation of Amber Rudd. She mentioned the expulsion of the 21 MPs, including yourself, as part of the reason for her resigning, not only from Cabinet, but also the Conservative whip.
Well, I think, for me, the principal issue is that she's been clear that there isn't really a negotiation going on with the EU to try and get any kind of Brexit deal. And from my perspective, I've been waiting to see the Prime Minister get on a plane to Brussels. That's not happened yet. And so my concern's always been that there isn't really a negotiation happening on Brexit now, and therefore the main objective of the government is to leave with no deal. And I think, certainly for my community, that's been completely unacceptable. And that's why I voted for this bill this week, which simply allows Parliament a binding vote on any deal were Boris to get one, but also a binding vote on no deal. And that's how we run Britain. It's a parliamentary democracy, and I think it's incredibly important to protect that. So I welcome that Amber has, even after we had the vote, chosen to support it.
At the same time, you're talking there about trying to stop no deal. You could have done that by voting for a deal under Theresa May.
Well, it was clear to me that that deal was never going to get through Parliament. I said that in
because of people like yourself.
Well, I said in July last year, actually, that it was obvious it didn't deliver on the referendum as far as Leavers were concerned. And for communities like mine, which are overwhelmingly Remain, people just thought, what's the point? We're following all the rules. It's far smarter to still be sat around the table setting them. So I think, in reality, it was clear that was a brick wall. The government chose to run into it 3 times, in spite of it being obvious to me that it wasn't a viable strategy.
OK. In response to Amber Rudd's resignation, we can have a quick look at something your colleague David Gauke tweeted, a former Conservative like yourself. He said, Amber Rudd has been extraordinarily brave, but her concerns about how the government is behaving reflect the views of many of my former colleagues. One way or another, it's time for them to act. I mean, do you agree with David Gauke? Is it time for more Conservative MPs to make their unhappiness known?
I believe many will this weekend be trying to work out the right thing to do. I think the reality is, for me, it's impossible to stand by and simply allow a government to inflict a no-deal Brexit on Britain. For me, it is the most profoundly unconservative policy I have ever seen. It destroys jobs, it harms our economy, it damages opportunity, it will damage social mobility. And I find it hard to reconcile that with the Conservative Party that's, for me, always been about a vehicle for social mobility. And one of the reasons I said I couldn't run as a Conservative candidate on Tuesday this week was because I think the Conservative Party is now fixated on Brexit. Brexit is its priority above everything else, and that is simply not a priority for me when I compare it to the chance to work on social mobility and equality of opportunity. I think that's the real issue facing Britain, and when I look at communities like the one I grew up in, Rotherham, I would much rather be working on the ground trying to practically make a difference. And I think the change that people in those communities need is actually access to opportunity. I think Brexit takes them further away from the solutions that I believe they deserve.
I mean, you mentioned there growing up in Rotherham, you were the first Education Secretary to be educated at a comprehensive school. Your dad
which is a shocking indictment on Britain, actually, that was the case.
If you were, that young girl in Rotherham, would you still be attracted to the Conservative Party today?
I think I'd see it as a party that was about Brexit, not equality of opportunity. And what I've decided is we can't allow this gridlock in Westminster to stop change from happening on the ground in communities that want it, and that's what I'm going to put my time into.
I mean, what some people would say is, actually, Brexit is the big dividing line of the day. Boris Johnson has a clear position on Brexit. Of course, it's right that people who don't support that position should not be in the Conservative Party.
Well, from my perspective, I had the whip withdrawn this week, but I haven't really followed the whip on Brexit for some time. So I felt it was somewhat of a token gesture and also self-defeating from the government. But I do think that the Conservative Party will not be successful unless it is able to reach out to a broad spectrum of the British population and reach out to very different communities, including my own in Putney. And I think for it to effectively turn its back on the views of a community like my own is frankly totally unacceptable. And I've always been very clear, my job is to represent Putney in Parliament. I am Putney's voice in Parliament, and I will fulfil that role come what may.
So with that in mind, will you be voting for an election?
Well, not if the election is simply designed to enable the government to dissolve Parliament and time out and deliver a no deal.
So tomorrow you're going to be voting against an election?
Yes, because I think it's not an election that is designed to do anything other than take away choices from the British people. I believe if the British people want to see a no-deal departure from the EU, they're the ones who should vote for it. It shouldn't be Boris Johnson just simply timing out the clock, even though people's representatives in Parliament are very clearly saying that that is not something their communities want.
We know that you're standing down at the next election as Conservative MP. Who are you going to be voting for?
Well, I think, like many people in my community, I will see what the candidates are saying about how they want to represent us, what their views on issues are. I have to say, the response from my local community has been fantastic, and the support I've had over the past few days has been amazing. People have emailed me, stopped me in the street to say that they feel I'm doing my job as an MP.
So you're not sure if you're going to vote Conservative at the next election then? You might vote for someone else?
I remain a member of the Conservative Party, but I think at the end of the day, I'm like every voter. I will try and work through what I feel the right thing is for my community and my country, and then cast my vote accordingly. And I really would urge the Conservative Party to consider how it can make sure it can continue to reach out to communities like my own. And I think we are owed a proper choice in this election, and I am worried that Britain faces a lose-lose choice, either a no-deal Boris Johnson government or a hard-left Marxist, effectively Corbyn government. I don't think that's the kind of choice that the British people deserve. I think they deserve something much, much better than that, and I hope that in the end Britain will work its way through this Brexit gridlock. And then we have to at some point get on to what I feel is the big issue facing Britain, which is inequality of opportunity. And all I can say is that I don't plan to leave frontline politics. I plan to put my time into fixing what I think the real challenge is for Britain, which is inequality of opportunity, and that whenever Britain is able to get onto that real debate, I will be at the front of that debate, leading the charge and hopefully making a difference on the ground in the meantime.
Just finally, I'm keen to know what happened when the news was broken that you would be stripped of the Conservative whip. I mean, who spoke to you? How did they get in touch?
Well, I was travelling home on the district line like I normally do, and I had a call from the Chief Whip. I obviously wasn't able to take it on the tube, so he simply left a voicemail.
And what did he say?
Just informed me that the whip was being withdrawn. I think it might have been polite after 14 years to try to call me back, perhaps a second time. But the bottom line, Sophie, is that I think we are where we are, and I'm very clear what my role is, and my role is to represent my community in Parliament, and that's what I did that day.
So did you have any conversations after that? I mean, has Boris Johnson tried to get in touch with you?
No.
Dominic Cummings?
No.
Nobody else has called you back? Or...
No.
Just the voicemail?
Just a voicemail.
And how does that make you feel?
Well, look, I think it says an awful lot more about, I guess, the state of the Conservative Party than it does about me. And I think, in a way, I have served my community and my country for 14 years. And I think it's a shame that the whip has been withdrawn for me doing the simple thing of representing my community in Parliament. I'm not in control of how the Conservative leadership takes its decisions. I think it was a self-defeating move to withdraw the whip, and I think it will backfire. But ultimately, those are questions for Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson more than they are for me.